Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Many of you may be wondering, how was it that I was with Christianity 7.5 years and then later on I came to Islam? Well, you have heard my story. After joining many religions, including Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity for 7.5 years, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided me back to Islam. The Surah al Fatiha was the starting point. But I just want to tell you, when I was in the Christianity, what really brought me to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm at this park, it's called Legenda Park. I come here often to walk and it's just really beautiful. Anyway, you see, it's very pretty. SubhanAllah. So what really interested me about the Bible mainly was the Old Testament. I was so interested to know from the creation how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created heavens and the earth and the creation of Adam and Eve, and then moved on to Moses and his mission and what he did and all the other prophets. But what is interesting is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's showing His vast mercy on humankind, on mankind, and He bestowed mercy on them by sending prophets. And of course the first of them was Adam, and then we have Adam and Eve, and then the one son kills another one, and then we come all the way to various prophets. Enoch, for example, Allah took him after 350 years, took him to heaven. And when we read the story of Moses and children of Israel, it shows the vastness of Allah's mercy on these people. How Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose them. How He chose them. Took them out of slavery from Egypt. And He brought them to the promised land. This is kind of getting loose. I'm becoming a professional iPhone photographer. I got to tell you, when I first got my master's degree in journalism and TV journalism, I invested in a very expensive television journalism, and I invested in a camera, a professional camera, and took classes. I did professional everything. I could barely carry that camera until I discovered iPhone. And all this filming, and it's like all I have to carry is this iPhone and my selfie stick, then I'm good to go. Anyway, when I talk, I don't give a lecture. I like to talk about whatever comes up that I think is reasonable for you to know. One of the things I like about this park is you see a lot of Muslim women with hijab, wearing hijab and exercising. MashaAllah, this is so great. Okay. Anyhow, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took the children of Israel out of Egypt, but how did He take them out of Egypt? He performed incredible miracles through, teaching and inspiring Moses to do. And children of Israel, all the calamities that fell upon the Egyptian people, children of Israel were immune from it. Anything, locust, blood, frog, lice, killing of their herd, the animals, everything that happened to the Egyptians, children of Israel were immune. Allah saved them. So subhanAllah, they saw that. And then when the sea parted to take children of Israel out of Egypt, and Pharaoh was following them, they were, according to biblical narration, there were over 600,000 people. Men, women, children, their flocks, whatever they could carry. They saw all of that. And they passed. And of course Pharaoh and his army, they got drowned. So what happened after that? According to the Bible, about almost 11 days after they passed by a town that people worshiping idols. They were asking Moses, why don't you make us an idol like this so we can worship? Imagine they saw the miracles of Allah. Okay. They saw the miracles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they disbelieved. Not all of them, some of them did. They disbelieved. And Moses, this is in the Quran. Allah, Moses is chastising them for talking this way. And they go on. Then later on, Moses wants to go to the Mount Tur, the Sinai. He's gone for 40 days to receive the commandments, and he had an incredible experience with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What happened? They started worshipping a calf. This story is long how it all happened, but the bottom line of it is they forgot about Allah. They wanted to actually see a God, see, hear in front of their eyes. And even Prophet Harun kept advising them not to do this. This pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They said, no, we will worship it until Moses gets back. And of course Moses gets back, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders all the ones that worship the calf to be destroyed by the ones who stayed away from it. Moves on. This moves on. You're talking about they finally come to the land of the promised land after many, many years. They would not enter because they were afraid of the giants living there, and they say to Moses, you and your God go and kill them, and then we sit right here. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises to let them wander around the desert for 40 years. They would not, the first generation will not and never enter at the promised land, except the two men that came in and brought the proper report from checking on that land. That was Joshua and Caleb. So this goes on until finally they enter the promised land. They conquer every land that they came upon. Allah gave them victory. They had vast amounts of land that they took over. Every tribe, 12 tribes, every tribe got land except the tribe that Aaron. There's one tribe that the priest belonged to, and I forgot the name. And they were not given land, but they were supposed to be supported by the offerings of all the other. Incredible. If you see how incredible this situation was, you cannot believe the majesty of Allah, how much favor He has put upon these people. So what happens? They get their land, and they were told, it is true that they were told that when you go into this land, kill any man, woman, and child, and even their animals. Don't leave anything behind, because if you don't, you will end up worshiping their idols. Do not leave any trace behind. This is said 2 or 3 times in the Bible. Allah knows best. Well, maybe they did that for a while, but after a while they didn't do that. What happened? They end up worshiping other idols. They ended up taking other idols as their gods. As Allah sent prophets after prophets after prophets, reminding them, and they didn't listen. When they didn't listen, Allah let their enemies take over them and made them into slaves, and they made them miserable. Everything that Allah had given to them, Allah took away from them. And when they humbled themselves and came crying to Allah, Allah sent the prophet, and through the prophet's prayer and dua and supplication and changing themselves, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again gave them victory. But the story of the kings, you see king after king after king with a lot of power. The kings were the most corrupt, who worshipped idols, who misguided their people. Some of the greatest kings that were different than that King David and King Solomon, who were both prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, I was going to make just series just on these, but I cannot. It's like there's no way. There's so much. The story is so much. And I keep saying how merciful this God is. How merciful. Like as I'm reading this, I'm falling in love with Allah and His mercy and how His guidance is encompassing everything and everyone. And yet people are so ungrateful. So as you read this story that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them, yes, get away. You're going to be wandering around the earth without protection. So Jews ended up going everywhere. Of course, Nebuchadnezzar came and took them to Babylon for 70 years. They were there. Then finally, an Iranian king, Darius, let them come back. Slowly, they got back into the right path, and then they got corrupted again, and then the temple was taken again. 70 years after Jesus' temple was completely destroyed by the Romans. So all of this were happening to them, and you can imagine that their progeny at least would take some lesson from what has happened to them. And that they will come to Allah, they worship Him alone, they would leave all the idols, they would leave the worldly position. But it didn't happen. These people, they were wanderers around the entire earth, everywhere. You wonder why Hitler slaughtered them mercilessly like this. We are not condoning that. Anybody did crazy things like that is basically a crazy man. Nonetheless, they had no protection from Allah. When there's no protection from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is what happens. So the rest of the story, I mean, they're wandering around, and finally the British, they bring some of them to Jerusalem and start settling them down, and the rest of it, how they committed atrocities for how many years in order to displace Palestinians and let the Jews settle in. So what we have now today, these are not children of Israel at all. In fact, as far as we know, there's no remnants of the children of Israel that we know of. What we have, majority of the Jews around the world, who are they? They're Europeans. They converted Jews. They're not the original children of Israel. And also, most of them don't believe in the hereafter. They don't believe in justice of Allah hereafter. They're Zionists. All they want to do is take control of the land. But nonetheless, the power behind them is much greater than we all realize. That it's who is the owner of all the banks, who is handling the financial matters in the whole world. It's all in the hands of the Jews. Who is in charge? Who is controlling the governments? Who is controlling the governments around the world? When you look at the politics, you see it is the Jews that handling them. But which Jews are these? These are not the children of Israel. These are the Zionists. Now I'm getting something mixed with my original thought of how I came to know Allah through the Old Testament. Through the Old Testament, I came to know how merciful, how wonderful is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how destructive these people are, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed them the most grace and favor upon them, and then they disbelieved. So if you come to Israel, even right now, the Jews that exist, there are some that are true believer, but aksarahumul fasiqun, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are corrupt. Allah tells us that. Okay, so after all of this, but then to the New Testament, Jesus, I loved him. I used to memorize his words, but I could never worship him as God or Son of God. You have heard my story, that this pushing me into being baptized and becoming Christian drove me into curiosity, read the Quran, and then I read the Surah al Fatiha, and that did it. That was the beginning. I mean, I had searched for Allah for 15 years, read Surah al Fatiha, and that did it. I came to Islam, alhamdulillah, but by this time, it's not like I just came to know Allah. So many stories that I read in the Old Testament are repeated in the Quran, but in a correct way. So it emphasizes again and again Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what He has done to the people, children of Israel, to all the people, how many prophets He has sent, prophets after prophets, and what people act. The majority of the people, they didn't believe. Even we have it today. So this is my story about I've come to the PhD degree of the scriptures, which is the Quran, and there is nothing else. There is nothing else that I can think that exists in this world that can bring a person closer to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala other than reading the Quran, reading the stories that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes. There are many stories are similar but not the same. There are so many contradictions in the Bible that doesn't even make sense, but the Quran clarifies this. So this is how I have come to Allah. I found Allah. I have found Allah in where it's like He's always there for me. It's just my awareness, my alertness, my consciousness brought me close to Him. I will give my life to be a good servant for Him. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, guide me. Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim, guide us to the straight path. Sirat al-ladhina an'amta alayhim, ghayr al-maghdub alayhim walad dallin. The path of those whom you have bestowed your mercy, not the ones who have gone astray or have earned your anger. So I ask you, my dear brothers and sisters who are listening to this, don't take this just as a lecture. I don't want to take so much of your time to just listen to a story. Make this as a starting point for you to make a decision. What kind of decision you have to make? Your number one goal has to be returning to the Quran. If you are not already, return to the Quran. All your guidance that you need is in the Quran and the prophetic guidance that we have in our hands. Please make that your aim today, right away, and start learning the words, learn the meaning, read the hadith, read the tafsir, memorize after you're able to read, pronounce properly, but make the Quran your daily rituals to read. Tahajjud, wallahi, I don't want to say this as if I'm doing something very special, but if I don't finish one juz a day, I feel like I'm missing something huge. Why? Because this is how I remember Allah again and again and again and again. I have to do this. And what happened? After 30 years of memorizing the words and memorizing the verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me the ability to know Quran without looking at any meaning. I understand. I don't read fast. I read, I stop, I reflect on the one ayah, and then move on. I keep talking so you can see more of this park. It's really beautiful. And my hand is getting tired. See, this hand, this arm, because I hold the mobile, it has tendinitis. If I hold too long, it really hurts. So many things I have to teach you guys. I don't know where to even start. So I usually try to do my online activities on a laptop, not the mobile. So I have to hold on to this on my left hand. Anyhow, I am going to say goodbye to you. Just show you this little lake, the last part of this beautiful park. And inshallah, I will talk again about other topics in this park. Invite you to join me. Have a nice day. May Allah bless all of you and let you enter Jannatul Firdaus and be pleased with Allah, pleasing with Allah. Ya Rab, help all of us get close to you. Ya Rab. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.